Poses by Pauline Kael, from Taking It All In, published 1984. While watching the 3-hour and 39-minute Heaven's Gate, I thought it was easy to see what to cut. But when I tried afterward to think of what to keep, my mind went blank. The writer-director Michael Cimino uses a garbled version of the Johnson County War as his subject. In Johnson County, Wyoming, in 1892, the Stock Growers Association tried to drive new settlers out of the state. The cattlemen claimed that settlers were stealing their cattle, and when they couldn't get the alleged rustlers convicted in the courts, they hired mercenaries to hang them or shoot them. Only 2 people are known to have been killed as a result of the conflict, but the movie turns the events into a shoot-'em-up holocaust, in which the helpless poor are destroyed. And by implication, will always be destroyed. Cimino might have taken his perspective on American history from one of Gore Vidal's smiling TV chats with David Susskind, who is always profoundly impressed when Vidal explains that since the banks and big business secretly run everything, the American political system is a farce. The conception is a complete downer. There's practically no one left alive at the end, only the marshal, Chris Christopherson, who seems groggy from the effort to act anyway. When he speaks, his eyes are far away. He seems to be trying to read a teleprompter across the river. Vilmos Zsigmond's soft, golden cinematography is extraordinary, but with all the dust and smoke and mist and fog, after a while the pictorial efforts turn into a beautiful blur. The movie is so unreal, so distant and vaporous, that its message of hopelessness leaves no impression. It just drifts by. I've seen a lot of worse movies, though perhaps none with such a woozy, morose mixture of visual virtuosity, overarching ambition, and slovenly writing. I think that Cimino did have a vision, but you don't have to be a clear thinker to be a visionary. It may help if you're not. The vistas and the crowd scenes are huge, as in a David Lean epic, but not so static or literal-minded. Cimino's is a different sort of madness. He goes for mood, atmosphere, movement. There's so much background action, horses galloping, peasants trudging, that you can't hear the dialogue up front that might help you to understand what's going on. Cimino is big on hubbub. I must say I hope it's pronounced Cimino. The settlers are bizarrely homogeneous. A whole community from some Bulgarian village seems to have moved to Johnson County, and another whole community from the Ukraine. The immigrants' languages and customs are intact, along with their choral groups. The women, in white babushkas, are bent low pulling a plow. Isabel Huppert appears, strips, and rushes outdoors. She's a little woodland nymph gamboling about. She's also the madam of the local whorehouse, and a fearless fighter for the rights of the poor. It's a Sigmund Romberg operetta that turns into a Dovzhenko movie, with a little help from Bertolt Brecht. Yet, even when everybody is riding around hysterically and shells are bursting, the movie seems to be in a fugue state. The bloody actions don't build to any narrative purpose. It's like a movie made by a cataleptic who can't remember that Huppert doesn't have to tell Christopherson that the leader of the mercenaries, Christopher Walken, wants her to be his wife because she already told him a few scenes back. As a plutocrat who knows how immoral the association's policies are, but is too weak not to go along with them, John Hurt wanders through, tossing his russet locks, addressing cultivated ironic thoughts to the clouds, and giving a performance that is so masochistically rotten that Charles Laughton, in his Heaven-Hell, must be weeping in envy. In just about every sequence in which Hurt appears, he flaunts his drunken misery by taking swigs from a dainty silver flask that wouldn't hold enough to make a sparrow tipsy. There are bits from all over in Heaven's Gate. It's a movie addict's vision of the class struggle, a composite. The spirit is late 60s, as if Cimino had just become alienated. His romanticism is as movie-ish as his alienation. There's even a revival of the scene of the stalwart man, Christopherson, bravely trying to down the terrible pie that the loving woman, Huppert, has baked for him. Some great movies have been made by hustlers who were also dreamers. What has tripped up Cimino this time is that he is innocent in a way that is indistinguishable from ignorance. In a position of power after his The Deer Hunter won the Academy Award, he inflated a Western script he'd written years before, turning it into an elegy for the downtrodden, and exposed a fan's sensibility. It's very like the dislocated, floating sensibility that Zeffirelli revealed in the 1979 The Champ. Doing his remake of the 1931 American film that had touched him deeply when he saw it as a child in Italy, Zeffirelli directed as if he had never met a human being. His modern American prize-fight milieu was full of hearty peasants clustering in courtyards and forming patterns for the camera, and playing the ex-wife of a D's Dem Do's prize-fighter, a woman who had walked out on her husband and infant son and become a fashion consultant. Faye Dunaway was dressed like a dowager empress. When she emceed a fashion show and recited the descriptions of the gowns, the buyers yelled "Bravo!" as if she were Pavarotti. And when she spoke to her child, she felt him up with her voice and nuzzled his neck amorously. This sort of insanity has always been endemic in movies. Cimino's hearty peasants have their simple earthly pleasures, a cockfight, spitting on each other, brawling. When it comes down to it, they're just funny foreigners. They don't even discuss organizing to protect themselves against the mercenaries. It takes a Harvard man, Christopherson, to show them how to fight. Yet Cimino might have got by with all the snobbishness and the bathos, Zeffirelli did, if he had just used a little street wisdom and told a story. Heaven's Gate is no worse a movie than Star Trek or The Black Hole or Raise the Titanic. I'd say the performances in these four films are about on the same level, though maybe more convulsing in Raise the Titanic. What makes Cimino's picture truly intolerable is that he got caught up in the visual possibilities and lost sight of the basics. You can't make out what's going on, or who is in love with whom, or where people who are old friends could possibly have met, or what this little French mouse, Huppert, is doing scampering through the picture. The day after the first disastrous press screenings, United Artists made the announcement that, at Cimino's request, Heaven's Gate in its present form was being withdrawn. It could be said that the press had been waiting to ambush Cimino. His public remarks over the past couple of years since the Deerslayer had invited it, and so had the cost of Heaven's Gate, which swelled to somewhere between $36 million and $50 million, depending on whether the interest and other expenses are included. And it's easier to jump on a picture like this than one on, say, Star Trek, which is so impersonal that there's no one in particular to blame. But Heaven's Gate is a numbing shambles. It's a movie you want to deface. You want to draw mustaches on it, because there's no observation in it, no hint of anything resembling direct knowledge, or even intuition, of what people are about. It's the work of a poser who got caught out. This poser does have an eye, though he may not be able to think straight, but he's a movie director. The idolmaker is of no special importance, but it's likable. A first feature by the director Taylor Hackford, it has verve and snap, despite a rickety script. The central character, a young songwriter from the Bronx, Vincent Vakari, played by Ray Sharkey, is searching for a singer with the right look for the Bobby Soxers. It's 1959, and Vinny, who knows that the look is more important than the voice, has the instinct, the brashness, and the energy to take a dissolute, baby-faced saxophone player from a juke joint and turn him into a rock idol. And then he saturates the country with publicity and pre-sells another idol before the public even hears his voice. As this ingenious, fast-talking hype artist, Sharkey shows his talent for Mannix. He takes a quick, hard look around him and sizes up a situation. He's light on his feet and sharp-faced, with a lower lip that sticks out like a teaspoon when he smiles. Training his protégés to be heartthrobs, Vinny moves like a flyweight symphony conductor, and when they're on stage performing in front of squealing audiences, he's still going through the gestures backstage. He's a combination of conductor, ventriloquist, and double. Vinny is so aroused by the crowd that he can't control himself. He thinks he's the one being applauded. These doubling scenes are peculiarly resonant slapstick, especially a concert in Rochester, with the babyface Tommy D gesticulating in white, and Vinny in dark clothes making the same gestures behind the curtain, and preening with pleasure as the kids express their adoration of Tommy's swiveling hips. Vinny, flying high all alone, is a paradoxical image. It has a little of Buster Keaton's detachment, but the script veers between muckraking parody and sloshy melodrama, and poor Sharkey is caught in the middle. Vinny hasn't been named Vakari for nothing. The script by Edward D. Lorenzo, which was suggested by the life of the rock impresario Bob Marcucci, keeps telling us that Vinny's vicarious successes can never be fulfilling. So Vinny must be despondent and take it out on his protégés in dictatorial behavior. He must quarrel with his girl, a dreary, smirky performance by Tova Feldscha. He must be beaten and then come back humbled and wiser. And how do we know he has come to terms with his own talent? Either he tried to turn others into what he thought he couldn't be. Now he himself performs. He sings a ballad in the maudlin, naked sincerity style of Barry Manilow. And when Vinny sings, the film curdles. If you are hip enough to enjoy the satire of such late 50s pop phenomena as Marcucci's celebrated creations Frankie Avalon and Fabian, you are too hip for this. Before this sour, self-righteous finish, there's a lot of comedy in The Idolmaker. The director takes genuine satirical pleasure in the lewd puckishness of Paul Land as the scummy lowlife Tommy D, whose singing suggests Frankie Avalon. Land, who had never acted before, plays the gangling Tommy D as a man whose hand is never far from his crotch. A boozing pillhead, Tommy D has a great dumb sicky look when he is in front of an audience. He's morally deficient, a natural degenerate. Land has a furtive comic spark that makes this mind-blown lecher a believable caricature. And the director takes another kind of satirical pleasure in the fruity innocence of Peter Gallagher as Cesare, the Fabian takeoff. This second idol is born when Vinny is sitting in an Italian restaurant, and the busboy at his table drops a tray. Vinny yells, and then, looking up, sees a frightened, swarthy boy whose eyes and mouth are impossibly, foolishly large. The kid, who looks like a Sicilian shepherd, is only 16. Sliding into Italian and speaking solemnly, with a princely old-world manner, Vinny persuades the boy's tough old bird of a grandmother to turn the kid over to him for training. The obedient youth works doggedly at his lessons, and Vinny remakes him. Soon, Cesare's skin is lusciously smooth, he dimples deliciously, his eyes look as sweet and safe as Bobby Benson's. His thick hair is brushed up in a pomaded pompadour that scoops down in a curly hunk in the middle of his forehead, and he has the Nelly, virginal look of a Donny Osmond. In the movie's big scene, this terrified dreamboat faces his first audience. It's as if he were being fed to the mob. We still don't know if he can sing, and before he gets a chance to show what he can do, the screaming Bobby Soxers break through the guards and mob him, tear his clothes half off, and chase him as he runs off stage. He goes back on with a reinforced phalanx of guards to protect him, and he sings, leaping and doing splits and whipping his arms high in the air like Engelbert Humperdinck. We see him being turned on by the excitement of turning on the audience, and with a teasing gleam in his eyes, he goes beyond what Vinny has taught him and shakes his shoulders to work up the girls. At this point, the people in the movie house were cheering and applauding this galvanic silliness of his triumph. It's after this, when Cesare is eager to perform more, and Vinny, the crazy despot, won't let him, that the movie loses its hold. There's also something more subtle that works against the structure of the film. Paul Land's Tommy D and Peter Gallagher's Cesare have more vivid personalities than their supposed creator. Ray Sharkey seems perfect for a character who's always on the jump, and he has the externals down pat, but his live-wire Vinny doesn't seem to exist inside. There's no fiber supporting the performance. Vinny has less on the ball than the others. On stage, both Tommy D and Cesare get the glazed, neutered look of teenage pinups. It gives the film a creepy authenticity. Taylor Hackford doesn't try to score points off their spoiled look or off the pop styles. The rock songs, by Jeff Barry, are of the basic tacky variety, with lyrics such as "I've been up, I've been down, I've been in, I've been out," and "Come on, baby, ooh-wee, baby, ooh-wee." When these songs are acted out with flamboyant gestures, they suggest nursery rhymes for berserk adolescents. Hackford doesn't work up an indignant head of steam about unscrupulous promoters who exploit teenagers' sexual fantasies. He sees the comedy in it. The staging of the numbers is impudent in a relaxed, not too large scale way. More imagination than money has gone into such scenes as Cesare's concert in Memphis, where he has the Reverend James Cleveland Choir behind him, and he's lighted up like a premiere at Grauman's Chinese. The songs give the film a beat, and it moves along. The only time it's too pokey is when Vinny goes to see his estranged father. Sharkey has too much moisture in the eyes, too many tortured twists of the mouth. Hackford gets us past the awful scenes of Vinny victimizing Cesare, and past Vinny's stupid blackmail threat against a fan magazine, and other funny plot devices, and he lets us enjoy the good bits without lingering on them. Near the start, when Vinny assesses girls' reactions to dark men singers versus blonde, and concludes that it's the dark ones who get to them, a blank-eyed, jiggling blonde twerp, the actor is named Jimmy Carter, sums up all the bobbing, finger-snapping fellows with aging little boy faces and names no one can remember. Later, when Vinny takes Tommy D to Rochester, the disc jockey, played by Kenneth O'Brien, who wants his payola before putting Tommy's record on the air, looks as if he were putrefying before our eyes. Tommy's backup singers have the syrupy sound and the happy, frazzled look that backup singers in a comedy should have. And all the way through, the costumes by Rita Riggs are evocative and funny without ever being grotesque. In the first flush of success, Vinny wears a straw hat reminiscent of Murray the K. A few regrets when Tommy D goes against Vinny's advice and takes a job in a TV series, a Western. I wish we could have seen him on the box. What a cowboy this fey freak would be. And when Vinny in the end begins his sincere song, it's too bad that the picture can't satirize his little voice, the meaningful croak that is retched from his gut. But Hackford comes through with something that's unexpectedly charming. The swooning girls are treated affectionately. They're very young, and the pampered boys with hairless chests who sing to them are, to be exact, living dolls. In Resurrection, Ellen Burstyn, a Los Angeles woman, is in a car accident with her blue-collar husband who is killed. She dies on the operating table, but only for a moment. She has an out-of-body experience and sees her friends and relatives who have died looking happy and beckoning to her. Then she returns. Told that she will never be able to walk again, she's in a truck on the way back to her father's farm in Kansas, when she encounters a piercing-eyed old desert rat, played by Richard Farnsworth, looking like a magical eccentric out of Mark Twain. He operates the Last Chance, a service station that also exhibits curiosities, such as a two-headed snake called Gemini. After showing her the snake, he reaches into the truck and puts his hand on her head. Soon she is able to cure herself and to heal others through the power of love. The picture is even and smoothly tasteful, a vat of non-denominational caramel custard. The director, Daniel Petrie, does some very polished, fluid work, but you're always aware of the planning and calculation. Mysticism doesn't come easy to him. The cinematography, by Mario Tosi, is maybe too clear and burnished, too awesomely American. Maurice Jarre's strings keep twanging the message God is love, and the script by Louis John Carlino, which attempts to combine holistic healing and feminism, is an amazing confusion of old corn and modern cant. Carlino was commissioned to write the script for Burstyn, and he has shaped it to her, or perhaps to how she sees herself. As Edna, the healer, Ellen Burstyn is a practical, uneducated woman who is sensual, radiant, and full of wholesome humor. She bestrides the movie, glowing with love. Shirley MacLaine said she'd have killed for the role, and watching Burstyn, I think maybe she did kill for it, metaphorically speaking. Your eyes don't go to her because she's doing anything of interest, but because she has got you collared. In one scene, when she's trying to get feeling back into her paralyzed legs, she talks to her big toe, and I thought, of course, she's always talking to her big toe. She's barely aware of the other actors, whom she's giving all this love to. Burstyn's simulation of beatific ordinariness is a little frightening. I don't trust an expression on her face. When she smiles, it doesn't disturb the rest of her features. She still looks as if she had a grudge against someone. At times, I felt I could see an angry hanging judge behind the glow. On the farm, Edna befriends a dog, Clancy, who has been whipped and had his spirit destroyed by her garnered, taciturn father, played by Roberts Blossom, and Clancy becomes her devoted friend. He's like a witch's familiar. She and Clancy understand each other, because when she was a young girl, her father forced her to have an abortion, which made her barren. There is a great deal of supportive sisterly understanding from the farm women, and some of the performers Lilith Smith particularly, give the homespun, inspirational mood a little texture. What can you do with an uncured ham, though? As Edna's Grandma Pearl, Ava the Galleon combines the worst elocutionary phoniness of Ethel Barrymore with the darlingness of Helen Hayes to produce the fakiest old sweetheart in modern movies. She wrinkles her nose and lifts her head so she can look out of her half-blind eyes, and she spouts homilies as if she'd lived her whole life on stage. When she and Burston hug, you wonder whose talons will gouge deeper. There's also a sub-Eugene O'Neill love affair between Edna and tall, skinny Cal, played by Sam Shepard, whom she heals after he has been stabbed in a drunken fight. At first, Cal, the hell-raising son of a fundamentalist minister, seems a smart rebel against his father's fanaticism. Shepard brings the role his raw-boned grace and shiny coyote's eyes. At times, he's like a dangerous macho Montgomery Clift, at other times like an Ivy League dropout hippie, and you're aware of Burston trying to act young to match up with him. She talks baby talk. But Cal becomes withdrawn and impotent when he sees Edna healing others. Then he turns into a raving nut, and since she refuses to claim that her powers come from God, he decides that they must come from the devil, and he arrives at her healing rites with a gun. She and Clancy go off into the desert, where she replaces the old miracle man at the last chance. The old man doesn't die, he goes to Machu Picchu. There's a streak of countercultural cheek in all this. Resurrection is like an imitation primitive painting. Edna wakes up one day with this awe-inspiring gift, and she's such a down-to-earth woman, she isn't fazed by it. Somehow the movie flattens everything out, so there's no exultation. You always get the feeling that it's cutting ahead, pushing you forward, yet it never reaches any emotional peaks. The movie is all about uplift, but it never takes off. Maybe that's what happens when a tasteful director thinks he can be intelligently smarmy. The picture is shaped for a star's conception of herself as a larger-than-life everywoman. It's a newfangled vanity production, a role written to show off Ellen Burstyn's wholesomeness. I bet she wouldn't have wanted to be wholesome if she'd attained stardom earlier. Why doesn't Edna use her gift to help suffering people, instead of running off to the desert? There's no point in questioning any of this. There's all that white light to tell you it's beyond reason. In one scene, when Edna's powers are being tested at a scientific institute, she climbs into bed with a twisted, crippled woman and embraces her, taking the woman's sickness into herself. The woman's body straightens. The whiteness in the background suggests a halo, although it might be just a squash court. What actress wouldn't kill for this role? Benji would probably have killed to play Clancy. From The New Yorker, December 22, 1980. Thank you for listening.